Lighthouses are built for protection. There's no way to calculate the number of lives that have been saved by their sweeping lights, highlighting coastlines and hazards, keeping seamen and sailors, and even pirates, from being wreckage on the rocks. Not all lighthouses are silent sentries, however. Some lighthouses have seen tragic accidents, and some have been the scenes of horrific crimes. As with most buildings that last for more than a century, these lighthouses have haunting histories that make them worthy of talking about. The first lighthouse constructed by the somewhat recently formed America was built in St. Augustine in 1824 on the northern tip of Anastasia Island. In 1865, the owner received an offer to buy the land, but because of the Civil War, Florida could only offer a small percentage of what the land was worth. The owner refused to sell, and he was threatened with eminent domain to force his hand. He vowed he would never leave the lighthouse again, and on occasion, visitors claim they have seen him wandering the property. One of the keepers of the lighthouse, Peter Rasmussen, had a penchant for cigars. He was also detail-oriented and known to keep a strict schedule. His cigar smoke can be smelled several times a week in different parts of the lighthouse, like Rasmussen is still performing his maintenance checks. He is not the only keeper that has been seen after their death. The most active spirits of the St. Augustine Lighthouse belong to two teenage girls, Eliza and Mary Pitty, aged 13 and 15, who stayed at the lighthouse while their father did repairs on the building. They were playing in a material cart that broke away from where it was tied to and rolled over a cliff into the water below. Visitors claim they can hear their laughter echoing in the tower of the lighthouse. A few have described a young woman wearing a blue dress with a matching bow in her hair, the same outfit Mary was wearing when she met her unfortunate end. The lighthouse is now operated as a museum, offering day and night tours of the first lighthouse built by America. The lighthouse in Pensacola started in 1826 as a lightship named Aurora Borealis. Anchored inside the entrance to the bay, the lightship wasn't very effective at lighting up the coast for approaching vessels. Manned by Jeremiah Ingram and his wife Michaela, they lived on the ship and kept the light turning for many years. Michaela is said to have endured physical abuse from her husband during this time, and at some point she snapped. One night in 1840, she'd had enough and took a knife to her husband until he was dead, leaving a bloodstain on the pine floors of the ship that remained until the wood was replaced in a refurbishing project. Somehow, Michaela was not charged with his murder and continued tending to her lighthouse, as she called it, until 1855. After her death, her spirit remained on the ship, moving items around and whispering to workers and visitors. The son of the next keeper tells of when he tried to clean the bloodstains from the floor, but they only seemed to grow bigger and darker. This boy also claimed he heard a woman whispering to him all the time. The lightship was eventually retired and a 171-foot structure was built in 1858. Its light was lit on New Year's Day, 1859. This structure stood throughout the Civil War and even endured a cannon shot from Union soldiers. Fearing more damage, the lens of the lighthouse was sent to Alabama until Pensacola could be deemed safe. A young boy who lived on the site of the lighthouse has many stories to tell. He reported hearing someone breathing in his ear while he checked the lens at night. He and his mother heard someone climbing the stairs, but when they called out, a door quickly opened, then closed. The boy looked out of a window to survey the yard, but saw no one exiting the property. A worker in 1992 finished nailing a piece of plywood into place and moved to a different area of the lighthouse. Later, he and another worker heard a loud banging sound and investigated together. They found nothing amiss except the nails that had been driven into the plywood were now protruding about 1/4 of an inch. A visitor brought his children to the lighthouse in 1994. At the top of the stairs, his son told his sister to stop whispering to him, but the boy was standing by himself. He swore he heard someone whispering his name. This lighthouse also operates as a museum and offers nighttime tours. The lighthouse on Gasparilla Island has a couple of non-corporeal visitors. Constructed in 1890 with an identical building beside it, two families worked at a time to keep the lighthouse going, splitting up the nighttime shift so it was never unmanned. A young daughter of one of the keepers is thought to have died on the property from an illness. Small footsteps can be heard throughout the lighthouse, along with the laughter and coughing of a young girl. Another story involves Jose Gaspar, a famous pirate that Floridians celebrate to this day. It is said Gaspar fell in love with and kidnapped a woman named Josefa. She did not return his feeling, and in a fit of rage, Gaspar beheaded her with a sword. Overcome with regret, he buried Josefa on a beach, almost exactly where the lighthouse would be constructed many years later. Gaspar is rumored to have kept her head and carried it with him for the rest of his life. A headless spirit has been seen multiple times around the island.